Single mom nurse refuses to let billionaire skipper line. He buys the hospital and makes her. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. "I need a doctor," he announced to the reception desk, his voice cutting through the organized chaos. "Now." Behind the plexiglass partition, a young receptionist looked up from her computer screen, her expression professionally neutral despite the demanding tone. "Sir, you'll need to fill out these forms and then—" "I don't have time for forms." He pulled out his wallet with his good hand, extracting a credit card. Black. Unlimited. The kind that opened doors. "I'll pay whatever it takes. Just get me seen immediately." From the triage station 15 feet away, Sarah Miller heard every word. She'd been a nurse long enough to recognize that particular brand of entitlement, the absolute certainty that money could buy anything, including jumping ahead of people who'd been waiting for hours. She finished taking a teenager's blood pressure, logged the numbers with practiced efficiency, and stood. The emergency room was packed beyond capacity. A school bus carrying the basketball team from Lincoln High had slid on black ice 2 hours earlier, and the resulting pileup had brought in 17 injured kids. Most had minor injuries, cuts, bruises, possible sprains, but 3 were in surgery right now, and 2 more were being prepped for X-rays. Parents filled the waiting area, clutching coffee cups with white knuckles, their faces drawn with worry. Sarah walked toward the reception desk, her navy scrubs rustling softly. At 32, she'd learned to move through chaos with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen too much to be rattled by much of anything. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes, a clear, direct blue, missed nothing. "Sir," she said, her voice firm but not unkind, "I'm Sarah Miller, head nurse. You'll need to wait your turn like everyone else." The man turned to look at her, and for just a moment, genuine surprise flickered across his face. He wasn't used to being told no. That much was clear. He was probably 40, maybe 45, with the kind of sharp features that suggested he'd spent his life getting exactly what he wanted, exactly when he wanted it. "I don't think you understand," he said, his tone shifting to something that probably worked on most people, authoritative mixed with just enough charm. "I run Foster Enterprises. 1 phone call and I can have the hospital administrator down here in 5 minutes. I'm sure we can work something out." Sarah crossed her arms, planting herself directly between him and the hallway that led to the treatment rooms. "Sir, behind me right now are children. Actual children who were in a bus accident. Some have potential internal injuries. One might have a spinal fracture. Your wrist," she glanced at the way he was holding it, "looks like a sprain, maybe a minor fracture at worst. You're ambulatory. You're coherent and you're not bleeding. That puts you at the bottom of the priority list." "That's ridiculous." "That's triage," Sarah interrupted, her voice still even, still professional, but with steel underneath. "It's the only place in the world where your bank account doesn't matter. The severity of your injury determines when you get seen, not your net worth." A hush had fallen over the waiting area. People were watching now, some with barely concealed satisfaction. How many of them had spent their lives being pushed aside by people who could afford to cut in line? The man's jaw tightened. He was used to problems that money could solve, and Sarah could see him trying to calculate his next move. "I could have you fired," he said quietly, but everyone nearby could still hear. "You could try," Sarah replied with the same calm. "But right now your options are simple. You can sit in that waiting room and wait your turn like everyone else here, or you can leave and go to a private clinic. But you're not cutting in front of children who need help more than you do." They stood there for a moment, locked in a silent battle of wills. Sarah had faced down drunk drivers, domestic abusers, and drug dealers in this very ER. She wasn't about to be intimidated by a man in an expensive coat, no matter how many zeros were in his bank account. Finally, he stepped back. "Fine," he said, the word clipped. "I'll wait." Sarah nodded once and returned to her triage station. Behind her, she heard him settle into one of the plastic chairs with barely suppressed frustration. She didn't look back. She had 12 more patients to assess. 3 families who needed updates, and a migraine building behind her eyes that she absolutely didn't have time to deal with. 3 hours later, when the man's name was finally called, Sarah was the one who led him to an examination room. His wrist was swollen now, but the x-rays showed exactly what she'd suspected: a bad sprain, no fracture. She wrapped it with practiced efficiency, gave him care instructions and a prescription for anti-inflammatories, and handed him a discharge sheet. "You're all set," she said, making notes in his chart. "Keep it elevated. Ice it 20 minutes every hour for the first day, and follow up with your regular doctor if the swelling doesn't go down in 72 hours. He took the papers without looking at them, his eyes fixed on her face instead. "You really weren't going to let me through, were you?" It wasn't quite a question. "No, sir, I wasn't. Even knowing I could make things difficult for you." Sarah met his gaze directly. "There are 16-year-olds in this hospital tonight who might never walk again. One of them has parents who don't speak English well and are terrified they can't afford the surgery their daughter needs. Another one's father is deployed in the Middle East and can't get home. Your wrist hurts, I understand that, but my job isn't to make sure the richest person gets seen first. It's to make sure the person who needs help most gets it when they need it." Something shifted in his expression. She couldn't quite read what. "What's your full name?" "Sarah Miller." She didn't add anything else, didn't offer her credentials, didn't soften it with a smile. He nodded slowly, still watching her with that same intense, calculating look. Then, without another word, he walked out. Sarah finished her charting, checked on 3 more patients, and didn't think about him again until her shift ended at 7 the next morning. She was gathering her things from her locker, her whole body aching with the particular exhaustion that came from 12 hours on her feet, when her phone buzzed. It was her mother. "Sarah, honey, turn on the news." "Mom, I'm exhausted. Can it wait?" "No, Channel 7. Now?" Sarah pulled up the news app on her phone and her blood went cold. The headline read, "Tech billionaire Bruce Foster acquires Chicago General Hospital in overnight deal." There was a photo of him, the man from the ER, shaking hands with the hospital administrator. And then, as the article loaded, she saw her own name. Foster, CEO of Foster Enterprises, announced sweeping changes to hospital operations, including the creation of a new Director of Efficiency and Patient Care position. In a surprising move, he's named Sarah Miller, a veteran ER nurse, to fill the role. Her phone rang again. The hospital administrator, her hands were shaking as she answered. "Miss Miller." The administrator's voice was tight with stress. "We need you to come to an emergency meeting, 9 a.m. sharp. Mr. Foster will be making his first address to staff, and, well, he specifically requested your presence." Sarah sat down on the bench in front of her locker, staring at nothing. Leo needed speech therapy, $800 a month that her insurance wouldn't cover. She was already working double shifts, already behind on credit card payments from the divorce. Michael, her ex-husband, was 3 months late on child support again. She needed this job. Any job, but especially not one where a billionaire who'd tried to buy his way past her just 12 hours ago was now her boss. The hospital auditorium was packed when Sarah arrived, still in her scrubs because she hadn't had time to go home and change. Nurses, doctors, technicians, administrators, everyone was there, buzzing with anxious speculation. Amy Parker, her closest friend on staff, grabbed her arm the moment she walked in. "Sarah, what is happening? Did you know about this?" I found out an hour ago, Sarah said, scanning the room. Amy, that's the guy from last night, the one who tried to skip triage. Amy's eyes went wide. The billionaire? Oh, honey, that's not good. The lights dimmed. Bruce Foster walked onto the stage, and the room fell silent. He looked different in the daylight, Sarah thought. More polished, more dangerous. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her car, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to be anywhere. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice carrying easily through the space. "I know this is sudden. I know you have questions. Let me start by telling you why I'm here." He paused, and Sarah saw something flicker across his face, something almost vulnerable, quickly masked. "When I was 8 years old, my mother died in an emergency room very much like this one. She waited 8 hours to be seen for what turned out to be a treatable condition. By the time they got to her, it was too late." The room was absolutely still now. "I built Foster Enterprises with one goal, to make sure that never happens to anyone I care about ever again. And last night, I saw firsthand what happens when a hospital is underfunded, understaffed, and overwhelmed. I saw children waiting for care. I saw nurses running themselves ragged. I saw a system that's breaking." He looked directly at Sarah then, and she felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "And I saw something else. I saw a nurse tell me, someone used to getting his way, that I had to wait, that my money didn't matter, that the seriousness of someone's injury was the only thing that determined priority." A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. People were turning to look at Sarah now, putting pieces together. "That nurse was right," Bruce continued, though his expression suggested the words didn't come easily. "But she also showed me just how broken the current system is. If I, with all my resources, had to wait 3 hours for a sprained wrist while children were being treated, that's not a failure of priorities. That's proof we need more resources, better systems, more efficiency." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Here it comes," she thought. "I'm implementing sweeping changes to Chicago General, new equipment, expanded staff, streamlined protocols, and to oversee these changes, I'm creating a new position, Director of Efficiency and Patient Care." He paused. "Sarah Miller, would you please stand?" Every head in the auditorium turned toward her. Sarah stayed seated for a moment, her mind racing. This was a trap. It had to be. He was setting her up to fail, to prove that her principles couldn't survive contact with reality. Slowly, she stood. "Miss Miller demonstrated last night that she has an unwavering commitment to patient care," Bruce said. "She also demonstrated that she's not afraid to stand up to anyone, including me, when she believes she's right. Those are exactly the qualities this position needs." He looked at her across the sea of heads between them. "The question is, Miss Miller, do you have the courage to put your principles into practice on a larger scale? Will you take this position?" The auditorium was silent, waiting. Sarah thought of Leo, thought of the speech therapy bills stacking up on her kitchen counter, thought of her apartment with the leaking faucet she couldn't afford to fix, thought of all the single mothers sitting in that ER waiting room last night, wondering if their insurance would cover their children's care. She also thought of the look in Bruce Foster's eyes when she'd blocked him last night, the shock that had given way to calculation. This man thought he could buy anything, fix anything, control anything, and he'd just bought her hospital. "I'll take the position," she said, her voice clear and steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. "On one condition." Bruce's eyebrows rose slightly. "Which is?" "Patient care comes first. Always. No matter what it costs. No matter how it affects efficiency metrics or profit margins. If I take this job, that's the principle I'll operate from. Are you prepared to support that?" For a long moment, Bruce said nothing. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. "We'll see, Miss Miller. We'll see if your idealism survives contact with reality. My office. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We'll discuss the specifics of your new role." He turned away, dismissing her, and continued his presentation. But Sarah barely heard the rest of it. She sank back into her seat, Amy squeezing her hand. "What just happened?" Amy whispered. "I think," Sarah said slowly, "I just agreed to walk into a trap. But I didn't have a choice." After the meeting, Sarah drove home in a daze. Her apartment was in a modest building 20 minutes from the hospital, close enough that she could get there quickly when called in, affordable enough that she could manage the rent even on a nurse's salary. Leo was at her mother's place. She'd pick him up later, after she'd had time to process what had just happened. But first, she needed to talk to someone who'd give her straight advice. Her grandmother Margaret lived in a small assisted living facility on the north side. At 78, she was sharp as ever, with the kind of wisdom that came from raising 6 children on a factory worker's salary and never once compromising her values. Sarah found her in the common room, working on a crossword puzzle. "Grammy," Sarah said, sinking into the chair beside her, "I need help." Margaret set down her pen and turned her full attention to her granddaughter. "Tell me everything." Sarah did. The whole story poured out, the confrontation in the ER, the overnight takeover, the job offer that wasn't really an offer at all. When she finished, Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "This man," she finally said, "he's testing you." "I know, but it's not the kind of test you think." Margaret reached over and took Sarah's hand. "Men like him, they don't understand people like us. They think we're inflexible because we're naive, that we have principles because we don't know better. He expects you to either fail or compromise. What he's not prepared for is someone who does neither." "But Grammy, what if I can't? What if he's right, and my principles don't work in the real world?" "Sarah Elizabeth Miller," Margaret said firmly, "you listened to me. You worked your way through nursing school while raising a baby. You survived a marriage to a man who thought his medical degree made him God. You've kept that hospital's ER running on nights when you were the only experienced nurse on the floor. You tell me, do your principles work?" Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes." "Then this is your chance to prove it on a bigger stage. That man bought the hospital thinking he could buy you too. Show him some things aren't for sale." Sarah drove to pick up Leo, with her grandmother's words ringing in her ears. When she walked into her mother's house, Leo rushed to greet her, his 8-year-old energy barely contained. "Mom, Grandma said you got a new job." Sarah hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of his shampoo, strawberry, because regular shampoo stung his eyes. "Sort of, sweetie. It's complicated." "Is it a good complicated or a bad complicated?" From the mouths of children, Sarah thought. "I'm not sure yet, but it means I might be able to pay for your speech therapy without working extra shifts." Leo's face lit up. His speech impediment had improved dramatically over the past year, but he still needed regular sessions. Sarah knew how self-conscious he was about it, how hard he worked during each appointment. "That's good," he said, "because I miss you when you work nights." And there it was, the real reason she'd said yes, not just the money, though heaven knew they needed it, but the chance to be home more, to be present for her son, to not be so exhausted all the time that she fell asleep during his bedtime stories. If Bruce Foster thought he could manipulate her with a better salary, he was right, but not for the reasons he imagined. Sarah's new office was on the 4th floor, far from the organized chaos of the ER she knew so well. It had a window overlooking the parking lot, a desk that still smelled like new furniture, and a computer with access to systems she'd never been authorized to use before. It felt like a cage, disguised as an opportunity. Bruce Foster arrived precisely at 9, not bothering to knock before entering. He carried a tablet and moved with the kind of purpose that suggested every minute of his day was scheduled down to the second. "Miss Miller," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk as if he owned it, which, technically, he did now. "Let's discuss expectations." Sarah folded her hands on the desk, keeping her expression neutral. "I'm listening." "I've reviewed Chicago General's operational data for the past 5 years. Do you know what I found?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Inefficiency at every level. Average ER wait time, 3.2 hours. Patient satisfaction scores, 61%. Staff turnover, 23% annually. These are failing grades, Miss Miller. Those are the realities of a public hospital serving an underserved community," Sarah replied evenly. "We don't get to choose our patient population. We don't get to turn away people who can't pay. We treat everyone who comes through those doors, and we do it with a fraction of the resources that private hospitals have. Which is why I'm here." Bruce leaned forward. "With proper funding and streamlined operations, we can cut wait times in half, boost satisfaction scores into the 80s, and reduce turnover significantly." "At what cost?" His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "Everything you're proposing sounds good in a boardroom presentation," Sarah said carefully. "Efficiency, metrics, optimization, but hospitals aren't factories. Patients aren't products. Sometimes the inefficient conversation a nurse has with a scared teenager is what prevents a suicide. Sometimes the wasted time a doctor spends explaining a diagnosis to an elderly patient is what ensures they'll actually follow treatment. Your numbers don't capture that, and your idealism doesn't pay the bills," Bruce countered. "This hospital was 3 months from bankruptcy when I bought it. 3 months, Miss Miller. Your high-minded principles wouldn't have mattered much when the doors were locked and your patients had nowhere else to go." He had a point, and Sarah hated that he did. "So what do you want from me?" "I want you to prove me wrong." The words surprised her. "I want you to show me that patient care and efficiency can coexist. That's why I gave you this position, not as a reward, but as a challenge." Sarah studied his face, trying to read the truth beneath the calculated expression. "And if I fail?" "Then you resign, go back to being an ER nurse, and admit that sometimes money and power are the only things that actually change the world." "And if I succeed?" For the first time, genuine uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Then I'll have learned something I didn't expect to learn." It was, Sarah realized, the most honest thing he'd said to her yet. "All right," she said, "let's discuss specifics. You want to implement changes. I want to protect patient care. Let's see if we can find the middle ground." They spent the next 2 hours reviewing proposals. Bruce wanted to install new triage software. Sarah agreed, but insisted on extensive staff training. He wanted to hire more administrative support. Sarah countered with hiring more nurses first. He wanted to create a VIP wing for major donors. Sarah flat out refused until he agreed it wouldn't divert resources from the general population. It was exhausting. Every point was a negotiation, every compromise a small battle. But slowly, grudgingly, they found points of agreement. By the time noon arrived, they had the outline of a 90-day implementation plan that neither of them loved, but both could accept. "One more thing," Bruce said as he prepared to leave. "I'll be observing your department regularly, shadowing your staff, learning how things actually work instead of just reading reports." Sarah's guard went up immediately. "Why?" "Because I don't make decisions based on incomplete information." He stood, smoothing his already immaculate suit jacket. "If I'm going to transform this hospital, I need to understand it first. That starts with understanding what you do and why you do it." After he left, Sarah sat alone in her new office, staring at the proposals scattered across her desk. She'd agreed to let a billionaire with no medical training observe her department. She'd committed to implementing changes that terrified her. She'd put herself in a position where failure would prove his worldview right and hers wrong. But she'd also secured funding for 3 new nursing positions. She'd gotten agreement on staff training. She'd protected the ER from becoming a 2-tiered system where money determined care. It wasn't victory, but it wasn't surrender either. Her phone buzzed. A text from Amy. "How'd it go? Are we doomed?" Sarah typed back, "Not yet, but ask me again in 90 days. She gathered her things and headed down to the ER. She might have a new title and a new office, but her shift wasn't over. There were still patients who needed care, still families waiting for news, still the endless work of trying to heal the world one person at a time. As she pushed through the double doors into the familiar chaos of the emergency department, Sarah felt something settle in her chest. This was where she belonged. This was what she was fighting for. Bruce Foster thought he could buy change, but Sarah knew something he didn't. The most important changes couldn't be purchased. They had to be earned, one patient, one moment, one stand for principle at a time, and she was just getting started. The new equipment arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Bruce Foster took over Chicago General. Sarah stood in what had been a storage room on the 2nd floor and watched as technicians carefully maneuvered a state-of-the-art MRI machine into position. The thing was massive, gleaming, and probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 years. Bruce appeared at her elbow, tablet in hand as always. "Thoughts?" Sarah ran her hand along the machine's smooth surface. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "Our current MRI is 15 years old. We have to schedule patients weeks out because it breaks down so often." "This one has AI-assisted imaging," Bruce said, and she could hear the pride in his voice. "It'll cut scan time by 40% and catch abnormalities human eyes might miss." "How many people did you have to fire to afford it?" He stiffened. "I haven't fired anyone. Yet." "Sarah." It was the first time he'd used her first name, and something about hearing it in his voice made her chest tighten. "I told you, patient care comes first. That includes having the right equipment to provide that care." She turned to look at him, really look at him. His tie was slightly loosened, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. For all his money and power, he'd been here almost as many hours as she had, learning systems, meeting with department heads, reviewing endless reports. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. "The truth, not the story you told the staff about your mother." His jaw tightened. "That story was true. I know, but there's more to it, isn't there?" For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "I've spent 20 years building a company, making money, proving I could succeed at anything I set my mind to, and none of it brought my mother back. None of it filled the hole her death left." He looked at the MRI machine. "This might, knowing someone else's mother will get diagnosed faster, treated sooner, go home to her children, that might actually mean something." Sarah felt her defenses crack just a little. "It will," she said softly. "This will save lives." "Then maybe," he said, meeting her eyes, "we're not as opposed as you think." The board meeting that afternoon was tense from the opening gavel. Gerald Patterson, the chairman, had the kind of smooth corporate polish that made Sarah's skin crawl. He'd been on the board for 15 years and clearly resented Bruce's takeover almost as much as he resented having a nurse in the room. "Director Miller," he said, his tone dripping with condescension, "perhaps you can explain why you've rejected the proposal for a premium care wing." Sarah kept her voice level. "Because creating a 2-tiered system where wealthy patients get faster, better care undermines everything a hospital should be. It would generate revenue that could fund improvements for everyone," another board member interjected. "Or it would divert our best doctors and resources to those who can pay, leaving everyone else with whatever's left over. Sarah looked around the table. We're already understaffed. Where exactly are these premium wing doctors coming from? Are we poaching them from the ER, from pediatrics, or are we hiring new ones while the general population still has to wait? Patterson's face reddened. With all due respect, Miss Miller, you're a nurse. Business decisions should be left to those with business expertise, and medical decisions should be left to those with medical expertise, Sarah shot back. This isn't a hotel, it's a hospital. Our mission is healing, not profit. Enough. Bruce's voice cut through the rising tension. Director Miller raises valid concerns. The premium wing proposal is tabled until we can demonstrate it won't impact general patient care. He glanced at Sarah, and she saw something that might have been respect in his eyes. Are there alternative revenue streams we should consider instead? Sarah had come prepared. Research partnerships with universities, grant applications for innovative care programs, community health initiatives that position us as leaders in preventive medicine. She slid a folder across the table. I've outlined 6 possibilities that could generate revenue while actually improving our mission rather than compromising it. Patterson looked like he wanted to argue, but Bruce was already reviewing her proposals. These are well thought out, he said, surprise evident in his tone, especially the partnership with Northwestern's medical school. We'll pursue this. After the meeting, Bruce caught up with her in the hallway. You didn't tell me you'd been working on alternative funding strategies. You didn't ask. Sarah adjusted the folders in her arms. Look, I know you think I'm just being difficult, but I'm actually trying to help. I want this hospital to thrive. I just don't want it to lose its soul in the process. I'm starting to understand that. He paused. There's a donor event this Friday night. Hospital fundraiser, I need you there. Sarah's stomach sank. Bruce, I don't do those kinds of things. You're director of patient care. Donors want to hear from you about how their money makes a difference. His expression softened slightly. Besides, if I have to spend 3 hours making small talk with Chicago's elite, the least you can do is suffer alongside me. Despite herself, Sarah almost smiled. When you put it that way, how can I refuse? Friday night found Sarah standing in front of her bathroom mirror, trying to figure out how to style her hair for an event where everyone else would probably have had professional blowouts. The dress she'd borrowed from Amy, a simple black cocktail dress that was slightly too tight in the hips, was the fanciest thing she'd worn since her wedding. Her wedding. She pushed that thought away. Leo appeared in the doorway, already in his pajamas, for the sleepover at her mother's house. You look pretty, Mom. Yeah? She crouched down to his level. You sure? I feel like I'm playing dress-up. You're the prettiest mum at my whole school, Leo said, with the absolute certainty only an 8-year-old could muster. Then his expression grew serious. Is your new boss nice to you? Sarah's heart squeezed. He's fair. Why? Because you've been sad. Not all the time, but sometimes I see you looking worried. He touched her cheek with one small hand. I don't want you to be sad. Oh, sweetheart. She pulled him into a hug. I'm not sad, just adjusting to changes. But you know what? That new equipment I told you about, it's going to help a lot of people, so maybe the changes are good. Okay. He squeezed her tight. I love you, Mom. I love you more. The fundraiser was held in the hospital's renovated atrium, transformed with lighting and decorations into something almost magical. Sarah felt hideously out of place the moment she walked in. Women in designer gowns and glittering jewelry clustered in groups, while men in tuxedos discussed business deals over champagne. Bruce found her within minutes. He looked different in a tuxedo, somehow more and less intimidating at once. More polished, but also more human. You came. You made it sound mandatory. It is. But he was almost smiling. Come on. I'll introduce you to some people who genuinely care about the hospital's work." The next hour was a blur of names and handshakes. Bruce stayed by her side, and Sarah gradually realized he was running interference, steering her away from the social climbers and toward donors who asked real questions about patient outcomes and care quality. Then Victoria Foster arrived. Bruce's aunt was exactly what Sarah had expected, elegant, imperious, and looking at Sarah like she was something unfortunate the cat dragged in. "Bruce, darling." She air-kissed his cheeks. "And this must be the nurse everyone's talking about." "Director Miller," Bruce corrected firmly. "Sarah, this is my Aunt Victoria." "How fascinating," Victoria said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Bruce, darling, might I have a word? In private?" Sarah watched them step away, saw Victoria's animated gestures, the way Bruce's jaw tightened. She didn't need to hear the conversation to know what it was about. She'd seen that look before, on Michael's colleagues, on his parents, on everyone who'd thought a nurse wasn't good enough for a doctor. She was turning to find the exit when a hand touched her arm. Dr. Helen Campbell, the chief of emergency medicine and one of Sarah's few allies on staff. "Don't let the vultures get to you," Helen said quietly. "Victoria Foster has been trying to run Bruce's life since his parents died. The fact that he's not listening to her this time is significant, is it? Sarah, I've known Bruce for 5 years, since he first started donating to the hospital. I've never seen him pay attention to anyone the way he pays attention to you. Even when you're arguing, especially when you're arguing, he actually listens." Before Sarah could respond, Bruce was back. "Sorry about that. Family can be—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Difficult," Sarah supplied. "That's one word for it." He glanced toward the bar where Victoria was holding court. "She thinks I'm making a mistake. With the hospital restructuring, with the community focus, with—" He stopped. "With me," Sarah finished. "She thinks you're slumming." Bruce's face hardened. "What she thinks doesn't matter." "Doesn't it?" Sarah kept her voice low. "Bruce, look around. These are your people. This is your world, and I'm just—" "Don't!" The intensity in his voice surprised her. "Don't diminish what you bring to this hospital, to this work, these people." He gestured at the glittering crowd. "Most of them have never done an honest day's work in their lives. They donate to feel good about themselves, to see their names on buildings. You actually save lives. There's no comparison." Sarah felt something shift in her chest, some barrier she'd carefully maintained starting to crack. "You really believe that?" "I'm starting to." His eyes met hers, and for a moment, the noise and crowd faded away. "You're teaching me that not everything valuable can be measured in dollars. That's not an easy lesson for someone like me." The moment broke when a waiter passed with a tray of champagne. Bruce grabbed 2 glasses, handing her one. 2 uncomfortable evenings in fancy clothes. Sarah accepted the glass, their fingers brushing briefly. "To surviving them," she agreed. They spent the rest of the evening working the room together, and Sarah found herself relaxing into it. Bruce introduced her to donors with genuine enthusiasm, highlighting her proposals for community health programs and preventive care initiatives. Several people were genuinely interested, promising follow-up conversations about funding. As the evening wound down, Bruce walked her to her car. The parking garage was quiet, their footsteps echoing. "Thank you," he said, "for coming tonight, for not running when my aunt was her charming self, for helping me understand what this hospital actually needs. I didn't do anything special. You were yourself. In a room full of people performing, you were genuine." He leaned against her car. "That's rare, trust me." Sarah unlocked her door, then hesitated. "Bruce, can I ask you something, and will you give me an honest answer?" "I'll try." "Why did you really give me this position? Was it to prove I'd fail, to punish me for embarrassing you?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "At first, maybe I was angry. No one tells me no. No one makes me feel... He stopped, seeming to search for words. Small, ordinary, like my money and power meant nothing. And you did that without even blinking. And now I think maybe it was the best thing that could have happened to me. He pushed off from the car. Good night, Sarah. Drive safely. She watched him walk away, confused by the warmth spreading through her chest. This man had bought her hospital, forced her into an impossible position, and challenged everything she believed about keeping her professional and personal lives separate. So why was she starting to like him? Absolutely not. Sarah crossed her arms, facing Bruce in his office Monday morning. You are not shadowing my shift. I need to understand how the ER actually operates, Bruce said calmly. Not from reports or observations through a window, from inside it. You'll be in the way. Then tell me how not to be in the way, and I'll follow your instructions. He met her glare with steady patience. Sarah, you've been telling me for weeks that I don't understand what actually happens on the ground, so teach me. She wanted to refuse. The thought of Bruce Foster following her around for 12 hours, watching her work, seeing her world up close, it felt invasive, dangerous somehow, but he had a point. Fine, she said, but you do exactly what I say when I say it. No questions, no arguments, no pulling rank. In the ER, I'm in charge. Clear. Crystal. She'd expected him to show up in business casual, maybe with the sleeves of an expensive shirt rolled up in a concession to practicality. Instead, Bruce arrived in scrubs, properly fitted scrubs that someone must have ordered specially, because the hospital's standard issue wouldn't have fit his frame. Where did you get those? Sarah asked, fighting a smile. Supply room. Your friend Amy helped me find ones that fit. He looked down at himself. I assume this is appropriate? It's fine. She handed him a visitor badge. Clip this on. Don't touch anything unless I tell you to. Stay out of the way during procedures. And for the love of all that's holy, if a patient asks if you're a doctor, say no. Got it. The first hour was relatively quiet. Just the usual chaos of a busy Monday morning. Sarah handled intake and triage while Bruce observed, making notes on his tablet. She caught him watching her work with an intensity that made her self-conscious. Then the ambulance bay doors flew open, and 3 paramedics rushed in with a man on a gurney, Jake Morrison, one of the regulars, leading them. 45-year-old male, possible MI, pain radiating down left arm, blood pressure dropping. Sarah was already moving, calling for Dr. Campbell, preparing the trauma bay. Bruce stepped back against the wall, staying out of the way, but his eyes tracked every movement. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah existed purely in the flow of emergency medicine, checking vitals, starting an IV, assisting with EKG placement, monitoring, adjusting, responding. The patient stabilized. Dr. Campbell ordered him prepped for immediate transport to cardiology. When the rush subsided, Sarah found Bruce still against the wall, his face pale. You okay? She asked. That was intense. That was mild. She glanced at the clock. We've got 6 more hours. Think you can handle it? I'm beginning to understand why you're tired all the time, he said quietly. The rest of the shift was a crash course in emergency medicine reality. Bruce watched Sarah comfort a terrified child with a broken arm. He observed her de-escalate a situation with an intoxicated patient who was getting aggressive. He stood silently in the corner while she helped deliver devastating news to a family. Around hour 8, during a brief lull, they grabbed terrible vending machine coffee and sat in the break room. How do you do this? Bruce asked. Every day. How do you carry all of this? Sarah cradled her coffee cup, considering. You just do, because someone has to. Because these are people's lives, their worst days, and they need someone to be steady and competent and present. She looked at him. It's not that different from running a company, probably. People depending on you to make the right call. It's completely different, Bruce said. If I make a bad business decision, I lose money. If you make a mistake, someone could die, Sarah finished. Yes. Welcome to medicine. How are you not terrified all the time? Who says I'm not? She smiled sadly. I just don't have the luxury of showing it. Bruce set down his coffee. I need to tell you something. That first night, when you blocked me in the ER, I was furious, but I was also impressed. And that made me even more angry, because I don't like being impressed by people who tell me no. Is this going somewhere? I've been trying to find a flaw in your approach, something that proves your idealism is naive. But Sarah, watching you today, you're not naive. You're the furthest thing from it. You've just chosen to maintain your principles despite knowing exactly how hard the world is. Why are you telling me this? He looked at her for a long moment. Because I need you to know I'm not trying to sabotage you anymore. I'm actually trying to learn from you. Before Sarah could respond, the overhead page crackled. Director Miller to ER, stat. Director Miller to ER, stat. They ran together. The next 4 hours were a blur, a multi-vehicle accident on the highway, 12 patients, all hands on deck. Sarah barely registered Bruce's presence as she triaged, delegated, coordinated. Somewhere in the chaos, she saw him helping transport a patient, saw him holding an elderly woman's hand while they waited for her daughter to arrive, saw him fetch blankets without being asked. When her shift finally ended at 7 p.m., Sarah found him in the locker room hallway, sitting on a bench with his head in his hands. Bruce! He looked up. His scrubs were rumpled. There was something that might have been blood on one sleeve, and his eyes were haunted. The woman with the head injury, the grandmother, She's in surgery, Sarah said gently. It's too soon to know, but the neurosurgeon is excellent. She has a chance. A chance? He laughed without humor. That's all anyone gets, isn't it? Just a chance. Sarah sat down beside him. Most of the time, yes. Your ex-husband, Bruce said suddenly. He was a doctor. Surgeon. Why? How did someone who does what you do end up with someone who clearly didn't appreciate it? Sarah tensed. That's personal. I know. I'm sorry. But he didn't look away. I'm asking because I'm trying to understand. You're brilliant at what you do, Sarah. You're dedicated and competent, and you genuinely care about every single person who comes through those doors. How could anyone not see that? Michael saw it, Sarah said quietly. He just thought it made me small, limited. He wanted someone who matched his ambition, his status. A nurse was fine for getting through residency, but once he made attending, once he joined the right practice... She stopped. I wasn't enough. The life I wanted, raising Leo, helping people, being present, it was all too ordinary for him. Then he's an idiot. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Don't what? Don't be kind to me right now. I'm exhausted and emotionally wrung out, and I can't... She stood abruptly. I need to go home. Sarah, wait. Bruce stood too. I'm saying this badly. What I mean is, you're not ordinary. There's nothing ordinary about what you do or who you are. And anyone who couldn't see that doesn't deserve you. You don't know me, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. I'm starting to, Bruce said, and what I'm learning scares the hell out of me. Before she could ask what he meant, her phone buzzed. Her mother, asking when she'd pick up Leo. Reality reasserted itself with jarring force. I have to go, Sarah said. Thank you for today, for learning, for helping, for just thank you. She left before he could respond, before she could examine too closely what was happening between them, before she could admit that she was scared too. Scared because Bruce Foster was supposed to be the enemy, the entitled billionaire who thought money solved everything, and instead he was turning into someone who made her laugh, who challenged her, who looked at her like she was extraordinary instead of ordinary. Scared, because the last time she'd felt this kind of pull towards someone, it had ended with a broken marriage and a mountain of debt, and the conviction that she'd never risk her heart again. But as she drove through the darkening streets toward her mother's house, Sarah couldn't stop replaying the moment in the break room, the way Bruce had looked at her, the raw honesty in his voice. She was in trouble, and the worst part was, she was starting to think she didn't mind. 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself working late again, this time on budget proposals in her office. It was nearly midnight, and she'd sent Leo to spend the night with her grandmother so she could focus. The hospital was quiet, just the hum of machinery and occasional overhead pages breaking the silence. A knock on her door made her look up. Bruce stood there, loosened tie, jacket slung over one arm, looking as tired as she felt. "You're here late," he said. "So are you." "Can I come in?" Sarah gestured to the chair across from her desk. "What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about what you said, about the premium wing, about keeping our mission focused." He set his jacket aside. "You were right." "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I want to make sure I heard correctly." He smiled. "Don't get used to it. But yes, you were right. I've been reviewing the proposals you put together for alternative funding. The research partnerships, the community health initiatives, they're not just morally sound. They're good business." "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not, or I shouldn't be." He ran a hand through his hair. "Sarah, I need to tell you something about why I really bought this hospital." She set down her pen. "I'm listening. When my mother died, I was 8 years old. I remember everything about that night. The cold waiting room, the way she held my hand and told me everything would be okay, even though we both knew it wouldn't. I remember the doctor finally coming out and telling my father it was too late." Sarah's heart ached. "Bruce, after that, my father threw himself into work, building the business, making money, proving we'd never be powerless again. And when he died in a plane crash 2 years later, I inherited everything. The company, the money, the conviction that being powerless was the worst thing in the world." "That's why you tried to skip the line that night," Sarah said, understanding dawning. "It wasn't just entitlement, it was fear." "Bone-deep terror," Bruce admitted, "because waiting meant being helpless, and being helpless meant—" He stopped. "It meant losing the people I love. Again. But Bruce, buying your way to the front doesn't change that. It just means someone else waits longer. Someone else might lose the person they love." "I know that now." He looked at her directly. "You taught me that. When you stood in front of me and wouldn't move, you were protecting those kids, and I recognized my mother in them. Scared, vulnerable, needing someone to fight for them." "She'd be proud of you," Sarah said softly, "of what you're trying to build here." "Would she?" Bruce's voice was raw. "Because I'm not sure I've actually changed, Sarah. I'm still trying to buy solutions. I just bought a whole hospital." "But you're listening now. Learning. That's change." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his confession settling between them. Then Bruce said, "Tell me about Leo." The shift in topic surprised her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Why he needs speech therapy, what he's like, what keeps you up at night worrying about him." Sarah hesitated, old walls rising automatically. But something about the late hour, the quiet office, the vulnerability Bruce had just shown, it made her defenses seem less necessary. "He was born premature," she began, 28 weeks. "Michael and I were already separated. I spent 3 months in the NICU, watching this tiny person fight for every breath. And when he finally came home, I thought the hard part was over. But it wasn't. He developed normally at first, but around age 3, I noticed he wasn't talking as much as he should. The doctors said wait and see. Then wait and see became early intervention, speech therapy, occupational therapy." She smiled despite herself. He's worked so hard, harder than any kid should have to work just to talk, but he never complains. He just keeps trying. He gets that from his mother, Bruce said quietly. Maybe, or maybe he's just braver than both his parents combined. Sarah felt tears threatening. I'm terrified all the time that I'm not enough for him, that he needs things I can't give him. A father who's present, a bigger house, better schools, opportunities I can't afford. Sarah, he has you. That's worth more than anything money can buy. Is it? She looked at him. You and I both know money matters, Bruce. It matters when you're choosing between therapy and rent. It matters when you're working double shifts and missing school plays. It matters when your kid asks why his dad doesn't visit and you don't have a good answer. Which is why you took this position, Bruce said, even though you didn't trust me, even though it meant stepping into something that scared you. You did it for him. I'd do anything for him. I know. Bruce stood, walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. My Aunt Victoria asked me last week why I was wasting time on this hospital, why I didn't just set up a foundation, write some checks, put my name on a building and move on. What did you tell her? That for the first time in 20 years I was doing something that actually mattered. He turned back to face her. And that I'd found someone who wouldn't let me take the easy way out, even when I desperately wanted to. Bruce, I'm attracted to you. The words dropped between them like stones. I've been trying not to be. You're my employee. This is complicated, and I have a history of making terrible personal decisions. But I need you to know, before this goes any further, before we spend any more late nights working together, you should know. Sarah's breath caught. I can't. I know. I have Leo to think about, and I can't afford to lose this job if things go badly, and I swore after Michael that I'd never— I know, Bruce repeated. I'm not asking for anything, Sarah. I'm just being honest. She stood, walking around the desk until she was standing in front of him. You want honesty? I think about you more than I should. I notice when you're in the building. I catch myself wanting to share things with you, patient successes, small victories, stupid jokes. She took a breath, and it terrifies me, because the last time I felt this way, it ended with my life falling apart. I'm not him. Aren't you? You're rich, powerful, used to getting what you want. You buy companies like normal people buy groceries. You live in a completely different world than I do. Then maybe, Bruce said, reaching out to gently touch her arm, we need to find a middle ground. The touch sent electricity through her. She should step back. She should maintain professional distance. She should— The overhead page crackled. Code Blue, ER Trauma Bay. Code Blue, ER Trauma Bay. They broke apart instantly, trained responses kicking in. Sarah was already moving toward the door, Bruce right behind her. The moment shattered, but the truth spoken hung between them, impossible to take back. They ran down the stairs together, reaching the ER just as the team finished resuscitation. A teenage boy, motorcycle accident. They'd gotten his heart started again, but he was critical. Sarah worked alongside the team for the next 40 minutes, coordinating care, contacting family, managing the organized chaos that was emergency medicine at its most intense. When the boy was finally stabilized and moved to ICU, she found Bruce in the hallway, looking shaken. I can't do this, he said. I can't watch people die. How do you do this? Because someone has to. Sarah's hands were shaking, adrenaline crash setting in. Because that boy has parents who love him, because every life matters, and if I don't fight for them, who will? Bruce pulled her into a hug. It was unprofessional. It crossed every boundary they'd carefully maintained, but Sarah found herself melting into it anyway, accepting the comfort, letting someone else be strong for just a moment. You're extraordinary, he whispered against her hair, and I know I shouldn't tell you that. But someone needs to— Sarah pulled back, looking up at him. This is a terrible idea. The worst. We work together. Very closely. I have a son to think about. I know. And I'm scared, Sarah admitted. Scared of what happens if I trust you and you turn out to be like every other man who thought money was more important than people. I'm scared too, Bruce said. Scared that you're already changing me into someone I don't recognize. Is someone who cares more about a hospital full of strangers than quarterly profits. Someone who'd rather spend Friday night reviewing patient care protocols with you than attending any gala. Bruce, I'm not asking for anything tonight, he said. I just needed you to know where I stand and that I'm willing to wait, however long it takes. To wait, Sarah repeated, remembering the night he'd stormed into the ER, demanding immediate attention. Learning, he said with a small smile, from an excellent teacher. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed, her mother, checking if she was okay, reminding her that Leo had school in the morning. Reality, as always, reasserting itself. I need to go home, Sarah said. Get some sleep. We have that board meeting tomorrow about the research partnerships. I'll walk you to your car. They rode the elevator down in charged silence. In the parking garage, Bruce waited while she unlocked her door, then leaned against it so she couldn't open it yet. One more thing, he said. Everything I said tonight, it stands, whether anything happens between us personally or not. This hospital, the work we're doing, it matters to me now. You made it matter. That was already in you, Sarah said. I just gave you permission to let it out. She drove home through empty streets, her mind racing. Bruce Foster was attracted to her. Bruce Foster, who could have anyone, wanted her, complicated, overworked, ordinary her. The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. But more than that, she was starting to believe he was genuine, that his transformation wasn't performance, that maybe, just maybe, people really could change. Leo was asleep when she finally climbed into bed beside him at her mother's house, too tired to drive them home. She watched him sleep, his face peaceful, and felt the weight of every decision pressing down on her. She could keep her walls up, maintain professional distance, protect her heart and Leo's, safe, predictable, lonely. Or she could take a risk, trust again, hope that this time would be different. As she drifted toward sleep, Sarah realized she'd already made her choice. She just had to find the courage to admit it. The board meeting 3 weeks later felt like walking into an ambush. Sarah had barely taken her seat when Gerald Patterson dropped the bombshell. I'd like to introduce someone to the board, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. This is Dr. Richard Thornton, who'll be joining us as Chief of Surgery. Sarah's head snapped up. Excuse me, Chief of Surgery. That's a decision that should have gone through the medical staff committee. Mr. Foster approved the hire personally, Patterson said smoothly. Dr. Thornton comes to us from Massachusetts General with an impeccable reputation. Sarah looked at Bruce, who had the grace to appear uncomfortable. We can discuss the process later, he said. Dr. Thornton's credentials are exceptional. Exceptional. Sarah pulled up her tablet and quickly searched the name. What she found made her blood run cold. Dr. Richard Thornton had indeed worked at Mass General until 2 years ago. Before that, he'd been at Johns Hopkins, and before that, 3 other prestigious hospitals, each stay lasting less than 3 years. She dug deeper during the rest of the meeting, barely listening to Patterson drone on about quarterly projections. What she found was buried in medical board records, carefully worded incident reports, settlements reached quietly. A pattern of rushed surgeries, corners cut, complications brushed aside. Nothing egregious enough to cost him his license, but enough to make any hospital nervous about keeping him long-term. After the meeting, she cornered Bruce in the hallway. We need to talk, now. In his office, she threw her tablet on his desk. Did you even look into this man's background? Really look? Bruce frowned. Of course I did. He's one of the top cardiac surgeons in the country. He's also been at 5 hospitals in 12 years. Bruce, that's not normal. And look at these incident reports. Patient complications, rushed procedures, questionable judgment calls. She pulled up the documents. He settles fast and moves on before patterns can emerge. These are allegations, Sarah. Nothing was ever proven. Because he's good at covering his tracks, and hospitals don't want the publicity. She leaned forward. Bruce, I'm telling you as director of patient care, this man is dangerous. And I'm telling you as owner of this hospital that we need someone of his caliber to attract the kind of donors and patients that will keep us financially stable. Bruce's voice had that edge of steel she recognized from their early confrontations. You can't oppose every decision I make. I oppose bad decisions, and hiring a surgeon with this track record without consulting the medical staff is a bad decision. Your objection is noted. The words were dismissive. Final. Dr. Thornton starts Monday. Sarah stared at him, feeling something crack inside her chest. Is this what we're doing now? You make unilateral decisions and I'm just supposed to accept them. Sarah, no. She stood. We're supposed to be partners in this. You said you wanted to learn. You said patient care came first, but the moment Patterson and the board push you, you fold. That's not fair, isn't it? She grabbed her tablet. I'll be watching Thornton like a hawk, and when, not if, but when, he makes a mistake that hurts someone, I'll make sure everyone knows you were warned. She left before he could respond, her hands shaking with anger and something worse, disappointment. For a moment, she'd let herself believe Bruce really had changed, that he was different from Michael, from every other man who'd prioritized status and money over what was right. Apparently, she'd been wrong. The hospital fundraiser that Friday was even more elaborate than the last one. Sarah had tried to bow out, but Bruce had insisted her presence was mandatory. So she stood in another borrowed dress, this time from her mother, trying to smile while Chicago's elite discussed stock portfolios and vacation homes. Victoria Foster descended on her like a hawk spotting prey. Sarah, dear, how lovely to see you again. Mrs. Sterling, Sarah kept her voice neutral. I've been hearing such interesting things about you and my nephew. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. People are talking, you know, about how much time you two spend together, about how close you've become. We work together closely on hospital operations. Of course, that's all it is. Victoria sipped her champagne. Though I do wonder, does it concern you at all that you're the subject of quite a bit of gossip, people wondering about your motivations? Sarah's face flushed. My motivations are patient care. That's all they've ever been. Oh, I'm sure that's what you tell yourself. Victoria's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow still carried to nearby guests. But Bruce has always been susceptible to a certain type of woman. Those who see his wealth before they see him. I'd hate to see him make another mistake. I'm not... Sarah stopped, aware that people were watching, listening. Excuse me? She fled to the ladies' room, her hands gripping the marble sink as she fought back tears. The woman in the mirror looked small, overwhelmed, out of place in her second-hand dress and department store shoes. This was a mistake. All of it. She didn't belong in Bruce's world, and trying to bridge that gap was only going to hurt her, Leo, everyone. When she emerged, Amy was waiting outside. I saw Victoria corner you. What did that witch say? Nothing I haven't thought myself. Sarah tried to smile. I don't belong here, Amy. Stop it. You belong anywhere you choose to be. Amy squeezed her arm. And for what it's worth, Bruce hasn't taken his eyes off you all night. That man is Director Miller. A reporter Sarah vaguely recognized from local news approached with a cameraman. "Can I ask you a few questions about your relationship with Bruce Foster?" "There is no relationship," Sarah said firmly. "We're colleagues working to improve patient care at Chicago General. But sources say you two have been spending considerable time together outside of work hours, late-night meetings, personal conversations. Those are work-related." Sarah felt trapped, ambushed. "I have no further comment." She pushed past them, desperate to escape. Bruce intercepted her near the exit. "Sarah, what's wrong?" "I need to leave." "The reporter. I'll handle it. They shouldn't have approached you like that." "It doesn't matter." She couldn't look at him. "This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come." "Sarah, please." He touched her arm gently. "Don't let them get to you. Victoria, the gossip, none of it matters." "It matters to me." The words came out sharper than she intended. "It matters when it affects Leo. When kids at his school are saying his mum is dating some rich guy for money. When he comes home crying because they're calling him names I won't repeat." Bruce's face went pale. "Leo's being bullied. He got in a fight yesterday defending my honor. My 8-year-old son had to physically fight another kid because of rumors about me and you." Tears were streaming down her face now. "So yes, Bruce, it matters. I'll talk to the school. You'll what? Buy them? That's your solution to everything, isn't it?" She wiped her eyes. "I need space from this, from you, from all of it. We need to keep things strictly professional from now on." "Sarah, I mean it, Bruce. I can't do this. My son comes first, and being associated with you is hurting him. I'm sorry." She left before he could argue, before she could see the pain in his eyes, before she could change her mind. In the parking garage, she sat in her car and cried until she had nothing left. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Leo's fine, honey. Watching a movie with your dad. Take your time." But Sarah didn't want time. She wanted to go home, hold her son, and remember why she'd sworn off getting involved with powerful men in the first place. Monday morning, Dr. Richard Thornton swept into Chicago General like he owned the place. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from years of being told he was brilliant, he immediately set about reorganizing the surgical department according to his preferences. Sarah watched from a distance, her interactions with Bruce limited to brief, professional emails. It hurt more than she'd expected, the careful distance after weeks of growing closer. But every time she wavered, she thought of Leo's tear-stained face, and her resolve hardened. 2 weeks passed. Thornton performed several successful surgeries, and Patterson made sure everyone knew about them. Sarah kept quiet, watching, documenting. She noted how he scheduled surgeries back-to-back with minimal breaks, how he dismissed nurses' concerns, how he'd snap at residents who questioned his judgment. She brought her concerns to Dr. Helen Campbell, who shared her unease but had no concrete complaints to file. "He's technically brilliant," Helen admitted, "but there's something off about his approach. He treats patients like puzzles to solve, not people to care for." "Keep watching him," Sarah said, "and document everything." Then, 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, Sarah's phone rang. Helen's voice was tight with controlled panic. "We need you here. Now, Thornton, there's been a complication." Sarah arrived within 20 minutes. The surgical ICU was in controlled chaos. Helen pulled her aside, speaking quickly and quietly. "Patient is Maria Anderson, 45, a mother of 3. Came in yesterday for routine gallbladder surgery. Thornton insisted on doing it laparoscopically, even though she had some risk factors that suggested open surgery might be safer. And he nicked her hepatic artery, small tear, should have been caught immediately, but he was rushing to get to a dinner engagement." Helen's jaw was tight. By the time the night nurse noticed increased bleeding and called it in, she'd lost nearly 2 units of blood. "We've got her stable now, but she's critical." Sarah felt ice in her veins. "Where's Thornton?" Can't reach him. Phone's going to voicemail. And Bruce. Patterson called him. There's an emergency board meeting in an hour. Helen gripped Sarah's arm. Sarah. They're going to try to bury this. I can feel it. The boardroom at 4:30 in the morning had a surreal quality. Patterson was already there, along with 3 other board members, all looking grave. Bruce arrived 10 minutes later, hair uncombed, shirt hastily tucked in. "What's the situation?" he asked. Patterson outlined it clinically, reducing Maria Anderson to the patient and her near-fatal hemorrhage to an unfortunate complication. He finished with, "Dr. Thornton has submitted a detailed surgical report explaining the factors that led to the unexpected bleeding." Unexpected. Sarah couldn't stay quiet. He took unnecessary risks because he didn't want to miss a dinner reservation. "Director Miller, you weren't in the operating room," Patterson said smoothly. "I don't think you're qualified to assess surgical decisions. I'm qualified to read a chart. I'm qualified to understand that Dr. Thornton has a pattern, and I brought that pattern to Mr. Foster's attention before Thornton was even hired." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Bruce's expression was unreadable. "What's done is done," Patterson said. "The question now is how we manage this. The Anderson family is understandably upset. I propose we offer a settlement, generous, of course, in exchange for their discretion. We'll classify this as a known risk of surgery, express our deepest sympathies, and move forward." "Move forward?" Sarah's voice rose. "A woman nearly died because a surgeon we hired against medical advice took shortcuts, and your solution is to throw money at her family and hope they stay quiet. It's called risk management, Miss Miller. Perhaps you should leave this to those with experience in such matters. Perhaps you should leave medical decisions to medical professionals," Sarah shot back. "That woman has 3 children. She trusted us. We failed her. We saved her life," Patterson corrected. "Dr. Thornton's quick thinking in the recovery prevented a fatal outcome. Dr. Thornton's arrogance caused the problem in the first place." "Enough!" Bruce's voice cut through the argument. Everyone fell silent. "Director Miller, what do you recommend?" Sarah took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "Full transparency with the Anderson family. A complete review of Dr. Thornton's surgical protocols, immediate oversight of all his procedures, and a public acknowledgement that we made an error in judgment." "Public acknowledgement?" Patterson's face reddened. "Do you have any idea what that would do to the hospital's reputation, to our donor relationships, to the value of this institution?" "It would show integrity," Sarah said. "It would show we care more about patient safety than public relations." "It would show weakness," Patterson countered, "and it would open us up to lawsuits from every patient Thornton's ever treated." All eyes turned to Bruce. He sat silently, his expression closed off, his fingers steepled in front of his face. Sarah watched him, willing him to do the right thing, to choose principle over profit, to be the man she'd started to believe he could be. The silence stretched. "We need to be strategic," Bruce finally said. Sarah felt something inside her shatter. "Strategic," she repeated, her voice hollow. "That's your decision. Be strategic." "Sarah, this isn't just about one patient. If we admit fault publicly, we take responsibility for our actions." She stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I warned you about Thornton. I told you his track record was concerning, and you ignored me because Patterson and the board wanted a prestigious name for fundraising purposes." "That's not fair," Bruce said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Fair?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Maria Anderson's kids get to wonder if their mom will wake up tomorrow, but we should worry about being fair." "Miss Miller," Patterson interjected, "if you can't participate in this discussion professionally..." She looked around the table at the 5 faces watching her with varying degrees of discomfort. Is it professional to cover up medical negligence, to value reputation over patient safety, to let a dangerous surgeon continue operating because he's good for your bottom line? She pulled her hospital ID badge from around her neck. The Director of Efficiency and Patient Care badge that had felt like such a huge step just months ago. She set it on the table with deliberate care. I resign, effective immediately. Sarah. Bruce half rose from his chair. Don't. She held up a hand. You had a choice, to stand up for what's right or to protect your investment. You made your choice. She looked at him directly, letting him see the disappointment, the hurt. You're just like him, my ex-husband. When it mattered, when it was hard, you chose yourself. That's not true, isn't it? She picked up her bag. You bought this hospital saying you wanted to honor your mother's memory, but your mother died because a system valued money over people, and now you're perpetuating that same system. Her voice cracked. She deserved better, and so did I. She walked out without looking back. Behind her, she heard Patterson say, Well, that's handled. Now, about the Anderson settlement. Sarah didn't want to hear the rest. She walked through the empty hallways, past the ER where this had all started, out into the pre-dawn darkness. Her car was the only one in the employee lot. She sat behind the wheel, shaking, and let the tears come. Her phone rang. Bruce. She declined the call. It rang again, declined again. Then a text. Please let me explain. She typed back. There's nothing to explain. You hesitated. That's all I needed to know. She turned off her phone and drove home as the sun started to rise. Leo would be waking up soon, getting ready for school. She needed to pull herself together before she saw him, needed to figure out how to explain that she'd quit her job, that they'd be back to scraping by, that once again a man had proven unworthy of her trust. At home, she sat at her kitchen table and cried until she had no tears left. Then she opened her laptop and began compiling every piece of documentation she had on Dr. Thornton, every incident report, every concern raised, every warning sign that had been ignored. If Bruce wouldn't do the right thing, she would, even if it meant going to the medical board, even if it meant burning every bridge she had left. Some things were worth fighting for, and patient safety was one of them. Bruce sat in his penthouse apartment as dawn broke over Chicago, the skyline spectacular through floor-to-ceiling windows he barely saw. The place was immaculate, professionally decorated, utterly lifeless, like his life before Sarah had stormed into it and told him no. His phone sat on the coffee table, Sarah's last text still glowing on the screen. You hesitated. That's all I needed to know. She was right. He had hesitated. For just a few seconds, he'd weighed patient safety against financial risk, reputation against integrity, and he'd hesitated. Those seconds had cost him everything. Marcus arrived at 7, letting himself in with the key Bruce had given him years ago. He took one look at Bruce and sighed. You look terrible. Thank you for that assessment. What happened? Bruce told him. All of it. The surgical complication, the board meeting, Patterson's plan to cover it up, Sarah's resignation. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression growing grimmer. Let me make sure I understand, Marcus said when Bruce finished. Sarah warned you about Thornton. You hired him anyway. He nearly killed a patient. Sarah wanted transparency. The board wanted a cover-up. And you hesitated. I was trying to think strategically. You were trying to protect your investment, Marcus interrupted. And in doing so, you became exactly what Sarah feared you were. What she's spent months hoping you weren't. The words hit like physical blows. I was going to support her. I just needed a moment to figure out how to frame it. Bruce, I love you like a brother, but you're an idiot. Marcus sat forward. That woman has been fighting for patient care since day one. She stood up to you when you were a complete jerk in that ER. She challenged every decision that prioritized money over people. She quit a job she desperately needed because you wouldn't back her up when it mattered most. I know. Do you? Marcus's voice was sharp. Because, from where I'm sitting, you just threw away the only real thing you've had in your life. The first person in years who saw you as something other than a wallet with legs. Bruce closed his eyes. What do I do? You tell the truth. Publicly. You admit Thornton was a bad hire. You implement Sarah's recommendations. And you make sure that patient and her family know exactly what happened and why. Patterson will fight me. The board can go to hell, Marcus said bluntly. You own the hospital, Bruce. You have final say. The question is whether you have the courage to use it. Bruce thought of his mother, of that night in the ER when he was 8 years old. She'd held his hand and told him to always be brave, to always do what was right, even when it was hard. He'd spent his whole life trying to honor her memory by building wealth and power so he'd never be helpless again. But Sarah was right. He'd become part of the problem, part of the system that valued money over humanity. Call the marketing department, Bruce said, standing. I want a press conference scheduled for this afternoon, hospital lobby. And get me the Anderson family's contact information. I need to speak to them first. What are you going to do? What I should have done in that boardroom. Bruce looked out at the city. I'm going to tell the truth. And then I'm going to do whatever it takes to earn Sarah's forgiveness. She might not give it to you. I know. Bruce felt his heart clench. But I have to try. Because she taught me something my mother tried to teach me 20 years ago. That true strength isn't in never being wrong. It's in having the courage to admit when you are and do better. He spent the morning preparing. First, a private meeting with Maria Anderson's family, where he apologized without excuse and promised full transparency and support. Then a call to the state medical board, reporting Thornton's negligence, then firing Patterson and 2 board members who'd pushed for the cover-up. By the time the press conference started at 3 p.m., Bruce felt hollowed out and strangely free. He'd made his choice. Now he'd have to live with the consequences. The hospital lobby was packed with media, staff, and curious onlookers. Bruce approached the microphone, no notes, no carefully crafted statement, just the truth. My name is Bruce Foster, and 3 months ago, I bought this hospital for the wrong reasons. He told them everything, about his mother's death, about his arrogance that first night in the ER, about Sarah blocking him and teaching him that money didn't buy priority, about hiring Thornton against medical advice, about the surgical complication and the board's attempt to cover it up. A very wise woman once told me that a hospital isn't a factory and patients aren't products, he said. I didn't fully understand what she meant until I stood in a boardroom this morning and had to choose between protecting my reputation and protecting patients' safety. I hesitated. For a few seconds, I actually considered the cover-up. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That hesitation cost me someone I care about deeply, but more importantly, it nearly cost us our integrity. Bruce looked directly at the cameras. Effective immediately, Dr. Richard Thornton has been terminated and reported to the medical board. Board chairman Gerald Patterson has been removed. And this hospital is being restructured as a non-profit organization where patient care will always come first. He pulled out a folder. These are the new bylaws. Medical decisions will be made by medical professionals, not business executives. Every policy, every hire, every change will go through a committee led by our medical staff. I will serve as the primary financial donor, but I will not have operational authority. The reporters erupted with questions. Bruce raised a hand for silence. There's one more thing. Sarah Miller, this hospital's former director of patient care, tried to warn me about Dr. Thornton. She fought for patient safety even when it meant opposing me. She resigned this morning because I failed to support her when she needed me most. His voice grew thick. Sarah, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I was wrong. You were right about everything. And this hospital needs you. These patients need you. I need you. He stepped away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions, and walked out of the building. He had no idea if Sarah was watching, no idea if she'd ever forgive him. But he'd done what he should have done hours ago, chosen integrity over ease, people over profit, right over wrong. Now he just had to hope it was enough. Sarah watched the press conference from her laptop. Leo curled up beside her on the couch doing homework. When Bruce said her name, when his voice broke, when he admitted he was wrong, something inside her chest cracked open. "Is that your boss?" Leo asked. "Former boss," Sarah corrected automatically. He looked sad. He did. Devastated, actually. And something in Sarah recognized that devastation because she felt it too. The disappointment when he'd hesitated, the pain of walking away, the fear that she'd been foolish to hope things could be different. But watching him stand there, admitting his mistakes publicly, restructuring the entire hospital, firing people who'd pushed for the cover-up, this was more than words. This was action. This was change. Her phone buzzed. Text from Amy. "Did you see? Girl, you need to call him." Then Dr. Campbell. "Whatever you said to that man, it worked. Come back. We need you." Then her mother. "Honey, I'm watching the news. He loves you." Sarah stared at her phone, at the texts piling up, at Bruce's face frozen on her laptop screen. She thought about Leo, about protecting him, about the promise she'd made to never again trust a powerful man who'd proven unreliable. But she also thought about Bruce playing Lego with Leo, about late nights reviewing patient files together, about the way he'd learned to wait, to listen, to care about something bigger than profit, about how he'd just destroyed his reputation to do the right thing. "Mom." Leo looked up at her. "Are you crying?" "A little bit." "Why?" "Because sometimes people surprise you, sweetheart. Sometimes they make mistakes, but then they fix them, and that takes a lot of courage. Is your boss, I mean former boss, is he one of those people?" Sarah wiped her eyes. "I think maybe he is." Her phone rang. "Bruce." She stared at it for a long moment, then answered. "I saw the press conference," she said before he could speak. "I should have done it this morning, in the boardroom. I should have stood with you." "Yes, you should have." She took a breath. "Why didn't you?" "Because for a second, I reverted to who I was before I met you, the person who measured everything in dollars and risk. But Sarah, that hesitation, it showed me something. It showed me that I'm still learning, still changing, and that without you, I'll keep making those mistakes. Bruce, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not even asking you to come back. Though God knows this hospital needs you, I just needed you to know that you were right. About Thornton, about the board, about me. And I'm sorry it took losing you for me to find the courage to prove it." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. "I wanted you to be different, to choose what was right over what was easy, and when you hesitated, I proved I was exactly what you feared," he finished. "I know, and I can't change that moment, but I can promise that I learned from it, that I'll do better, that patient care will always come first, even when it costs me everything. It's not enough to promise, Bruce. You have to show it, every day, in every decision." "I know." "Which is why I've already started." He paused. "The hospital bylaws have been changed. Medical decisions are made by medical professionals. I've established an independent ethics board. I've pledged half my personal fortune to an endowment for patient care. And I've created a new position, Chief Executive Officer with full operational authority." Sarah's breath caught. Bruce, I want it to be you, not because of what's between us personally, but because you're the only person I trust to lead this hospital the right way, the way my mother would have wanted, the way patients deserve. I don't know if I can trust you again. I understand. And I'll wait. However long it takes. His voice dropped. You taught me to wait my turn, Sarah. I'm still learning, but I'm willing to wait for you. For forgiveness. For a chance to prove I really have changed. Sarah looked at Leo, at her tiny apartment, at the life she'd built through sheer determination and unwavering principles. She thought about how lonely that life had been, how much she'd closed herself off after Michael, how terrified she was of being hurt again. But she also thought about Bruce sitting on her porch playing Lego with her son, about him holding her hand after a difficult case, about the way he looked at her like she was extraordinary instead of ordinary, about his transformation from entitled billionaire to someone who genuinely cared about patient care. People could change. She'd seen it happen. The question was whether she had the courage to believe in that change, to risk her heart again, to trust that this time would be different. I need time, she finally said, to think, to decide what's best for Leo and for me. Take all the time you need, Bruce said. I'll be here, waiting. After they hung up, Sarah sat with Leo until he fell asleep, his head on her lap. She stroked his hair and thought about the choice in front of her. She could stay safe, keep her walls up, protect her heart, or she could take a leap of faith, trust in transformation, hope that love and redemption were possible. The choice, she realized, wasn't just about Bruce. It was about her, about whether she'd let past pain dictate her future, about whether she believed people could truly change, or if she'd decided they couldn't before giving them the chance to prove otherwise. As Leo's breathing deepened into sleep, Sarah made her decision. Tomorrow, she'd call Bruce, not with an answer, but with conditions. If they were going to do this, rebuild trust, try again, see if what was between them was real, it would be on her terms, slowly, carefully, with Leo's well-being always the priority. But she'd give him the chance he was asking for, the chance to prove his transformation was real, the chance to show her that this time, finally, could be different, because if she'd learned anything in 32 years, it was that the bravest thing anyone could do was hope. And Sarah Miller had never backed down from doing the brave thing. Sarah called Bruce the next morning, before she could second-guess herself. I have conditions. Anything, he said immediately. Don't agree before you hear them. She took a breath. First, I want to see the hospital restructuring in action, real change, not just paperwork. Second, if I come back as CEO, we maintain strict professional boundaries at work. No blurred lines, no gossip, no reason for anyone to question whether I earned the position. Third, she hesitated. If we're going to explore whatever this is between us personally, it happens slowly, very slowly. Leo has to feel safe and comfortable. One wrong move, one hint that you're not genuine, and I'm out, permanently. Understood. Bruce's voice was steady. What else? I want you to work as a hospital volunteer for 3 months, not observing from the executive floor, actually working, transport, cafeteria, whatever needs doing. If you can do that without complaint, without using your name or money to make it easier, then I'll believe the change is real. There was a pause. Sarah held her breath, waiting for the objections, the negotiations, the signs that he hadn't really changed at all. When do I start? Bruce asked. Monday, 6 a.m. Report to the volunteer coordinator, Thomas Bennett. He doesn't know who you are, and I'd like to keep it that way as long as possible. Sarah? His voice was soft. Thank you. For the chance, I won't waste it. After they hung up, Sarah sat in her quiet apartment and wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or the bravest decision. Monday morning, Sarah arrived at the hospital at 5:30 to brief Thomas Bennett privately. The volunteer coordinator was a 60-year-old former Marine with no tolerance for nonsense and a gift for spotting people who weren't genuinely committed. "So this Bruce Foster," Thomas said, skepticism clear in his voice, "the billionaire who bought the hospital, wants to volunteer in transport and housekeeping." "He does. And Thomas, I need you to treat him exactly like you'd treat any other volunteer. No special treatment, no shortcuts. If he can't cut it, let him go." Thomas grinned. "Ma'am, it will be my absolute pleasure." Bruce arrived precisely at 6, wearing donated scrubs and looking nervous. Sarah watched from a distance as Thomas put him through orientation, safety procedures, patient privacy rules, proper protocol for moving patients. Bruce listened intently, took notes, asked thoughtful questions. His first assignment was transport, moving patients from radiology back to their rooms, delivering specimens to the lab, wheeling discharge patients to their rides. Sarah shadowed his first few trips discreetly, watching how he interacted with patients. An elderly man named Walter Murphy was his third patient, recovering from hip surgery and grumpy about being moved. "Easy does it, young man. I'm not a sack of potatoes." "No, sir, you're not." Bruce adjusted his grip carefully. "My apologies. How's your pain level right now?" "Terrible. But the nurses say I can't have more medication yet." "That must be frustrating." Bruce wheeled him smoothly into the elevator. "They're trying to balance pain management with not slowing down your recovery. But it's still hard. You sound like you know something about it." "I've spent some time in hospitals," Bruce said carefully, "enough to know the patient's experience often gets lost in the medical necessities." Back in his room, Walter looked at Bruce with new interest. "You're not like most volunteers. Most of them are kids getting service hours or retirees with nothing else to do. You've got purpose about you." "I'm trying to learn," Bruce said simply, "to do better." Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. This was real, not performance, not manipulation, genuine humility. The day continued. Bruce transported 23 patients, delivered 67 lab specimens, and helped housekeeping clean 4 rooms when they were short-staffed. He didn't complain, didn't pull rank, didn't even seem to notice when one of the orderlies made a joke about trust fund babies trying to feel good about themselves. At 7 p.m, when his shift ended, Sarah found him sitting on a bench outside the volunteer locker room, his scrubs sweat-stained, his face exhausted but peaceful. "How was day 1?" she asked. "Humbling, exhausting. Exactly what I needed." He looked up at her. "Thank you for this, Sarah. I know you didn't have to give me the chance. You still have 89 more days to go. Don't thank me yet." He smiled. "See you tomorrow?" "Tomorrow's my day off, but I'll be watching your progress." She hesitated, then added, "You did good today, Bruce." His face lit up like she'd given him the greatest gift. "That means everything coming from you." 2 weeks in, Bruce showed up at Sarah's apartment unannounced on a Saturday afternoon. She opened the door to find him standing there in jeans and a t-shirt, holding a toolbox. "What are you doing here?" "Leo mentioned your kitchen faucet leaks. I thought I could fix it." He looked uncertain, vulnerable. "If that's okay, I'm not trying to overstep. I just thought—" "Mom, is that Bruce?" Leo appeared behind her, eyes wide with excitement. "You came? I told you about the faucet at therapy?" Sarah's stomach dropped. "When did you see Bruce at therapy?" "Last week," Bruce said quickly. "I asked Mrs. Washington if I could sit in on one of Leo's sessions, just to learn more about what he's working on. She cleared it with you. Didn't she tell you?" Mrs. Washington had mentioned a friend of the family wanting to observe. Sarah had assumed it was her mother. She might have been vague about who. "I'm sorry. I should have told you directly. I can leave." "No, Leo grabbed Bruce's free hand. Please stay. I want to show you how good I'm getting at the sounds we practiced. Sarah looked at her son's hopeful face, then at Bruce's careful, respectful expression, and felt her last defenses crumbling. Come in, but you're not just fixing the faucet. If you're going to be here, you're staying for dinner, and Leo's going to help you cook. Bruce's smile could have lit up the city. Deal. Watching them work together in her tiny kitchen, Bruce patiently showing Leo how to chop vegetables, Leo chattering away about school without his usual self-consciousness about his speech. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't a wealthy man trying to buy his way into their lives. This was someone genuinely investing time and attention, meeting them where they were. Mom, Bruce knows how to make real meatballs, Leo announced proudly. From scratch. My mother taught me, Bruce said, his hands working the mixture with practiced ease. Before she died, we'd make them together every Sunday. Your mum died. Leo's face grew serious. That's really sad. It was. But you know what helps? Remembering the good times, like making meatballs. Every time I do this, I feel close to her again. I don't have those kind of memories with my dad, Leo said quietly. He left before I was old enough to remember much. Bruce crouched down to Leo's eye level. Then maybe we can make some new memories if your mum says it's okay. Different isn't bad, Leo. It's just different. Sarah had to turn away, blinking back tears. She'd spent 8 years trying to be enough for Leo, terrified she couldn't give him everything he needed. But watching Bruce with her son, she realized Leo didn't need perfection. He needed presence. And Bruce was offering exactly that. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Meatballs that were slightly overcooked but delicious. Salad with too much dressing because Leo got enthusiastic. And garlic bread that Bruce saved from burning at the last second. They ate at Sarah's small kitchen table, Leo regaling them with stories from school. Bruce listening with genuine interest. Sarah feeling her heart open wider than she'd thought possible. After dinner, Leo showed Bruce his room, walls covered with drawings, Lego creations on every surface, books stacked haphazardly. This is where I do my homework. Mum helps me every night, even when she's really tired from work. Your mum is pretty amazing, Bruce said, examining a drawing of what appeared to be a superhero nurse. Is this her? Yeah, that's Super Nurse Mom. She saves people. She saved me, Bruce said quietly, meeting Sarah's eyes over Leo's head. When it was Leo's bedtime, he asked Bruce if he'd read him a story. Sarah started to object. This was moving fast, too fast. But Bruce looked at her with such hope that she nodded. She listened from the doorway as Bruce read from Leo's favorite book, doing different voices for each character, making Leo giggle. When the story ended, Leo said sleepily, "Will you come back? If your mom says it's okay, I'd love to come back. She will. She smiles different when you're here." Out of the mouths of children, Sarah thought. After Leo fell asleep, Sarah walked Bruce to the door. "Thank you for today, for being patient with him, for—" she struggled for words, "for showing up, really showing up. Thank you for letting me." Bruce lingered in the doorway. "Sarah, I know we're taking this slow, and I respect that. But I need you to know this, tonight, with you and Leo, it's the best day I've had in 20 years. It was pretty great," Sarah admitted. "Can I come back? Not to fix things or to impress you, just to spend time with both of you." "Yes," Sarah said, surprising herself. "But Bruce, I know. Slow. Careful. Earning trust day by day. I've got it." He smiled. "I'm a quick learner when the teacher is worth learning from." After he left, Sarah leaned against her closed door and let herself feel the hope she'd been suppressing. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. 6 weeks into Bruce's volunteer stint, The hospital board meeting was packed. Sarah sat at the head of the conference table in her capacity as interim CEO, a position she'd accepted with clear boundaries and the support of the entire medical staff. The quarterly reports were extraordinary. Patient satisfaction scores had jumped to 89%. Staff retention was at its highest in a decade. The hospital had been featured in 3 national publications as a model for healthcare reform, and donations were actually up, not down, despite or perhaps because of the transparency about past mistakes. Dr. Helen Campbell presented the medical quality report. We've seen a significant reduction in preventable complications. The new oversight protocols for surgical procedures are working exactly as CEO Miller designed them. And the financial picture? Asked board member Robert Hayes, a former hospital administrator who'd been brought in to replace Patterson's cronies. Marcus Johnson, now officially Bruce's liaison to the board in his capacity as primary donor, stood to present. Revenue is stable. The non-profit structure is attracting grant funding we weren't eligible for before, and the partnership with Northwestern's medical school that CEO Miller initiated is bringing in both revenue and prestige. Where is Mr. Foster today? Another board member asked. Working, Sarah said simply. He volunteers 4 days a week in various hospital departments. Transport, housekeeping, food services. He's currently helping prep the cafeteria for lunch service. Impressed murmurs around the table. Victoria Foster, who'd retained her board seat by virtue of her foundation's continued support, looked like she'd bitten into something sour. Surely Bruce has more important things to do than cafeteria work. He seems to think understanding every aspect of hospital operations is exactly what he should be doing, Sarah replied evenly. And the staff reports that he's an excellent volunteer, reliable, hard-working, and genuinely interested in learning. After the meeting, Victoria cornered Sarah in the hallway. I owe you an apology. Sarah blinked, surprised. Excuse me. I was wrong about you, about your intentions, about your influence on my nephew. Victoria's voice was stiff but sincere. I've watched Bruce for 5 years since his broken engagement. He's been going through the motions of living without actually being alive until you... Mrs. Sterling. Victoria, please. The older woman's expression softened. I've known Bruce since he was 10 years old, lost and grieving after his mother's death. I've never seen him happy, fulfilled, successful, yes, but not happy. Not until these past 2 months. I don't know what to say. Say, you'll keep pushing him. Keep challenging him. Keep making him be better than the man his father's legacy tried to make him. Victoria touched Sarah's arm gently. My sister-in-law, Rebecca, would have loved you. You're exactly the kind of woman she hoped her son would find. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. One more thing. Victoria pulled out an envelope. Bruce doesn't know I'm giving you this. It's a letter Rebecca wrote to Bruce when she was in the hospital, knowing she might not make it. She gave it to me to give to him when he fell in love. I've been holding it for 32 years. I think now is the time. Sarah held the envelope like it was made of glass. Are you sure? I'm sure. Victoria smiled sadly. Love him well, Sarah. He's waited a long time to let someone in. That evening, Sarah found Bruce in the hospital cafeteria, wiping down tables after the dinner rush. He looked up when she approached, his face lighting up. Hey, board meeting go okay? Very okay. We're officially profitable under the new model. She set her bag down. Can we talk? Somewhere private? Concern flickered across his face. Of course. My office? In the executive suite, a space Bruce rarely used now, Sarah handed him Victoria's envelope. Your aunt gave me this today. She said it was time. Bruce stared at the envelope, his hands trembling slightly as he recognized his mother's handwriting. How? Where did this come from? Read it, Sarah said softly. I'll wait. He opened it carefully, unfolding pages that had been sealed for over 3 decades. Sarah watched his face as he read, saw shock, grief, joy, and finally, peace wash over his features. When he finished, tears were streaming down his face. She knew, he whispered, all those years ago. She knew I'd spend my life trying to fix what happened to her, and she wrote this to tell me... His voice broke. To tell me that the best way to honor her memory wasn't to hoard power and money. It was to love people, to serve them, to be the kind of man who makes the world gentler for others. Sarah moved to sit beside him on the couch. She sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was. Bruce carefully refolded the letter. Sarah, there's something else in here. She wrote about the kind of person she hoped I'd fall in love with someday. He looked at her directly. She described someone brave and kind and unwilling to accept less than what's right, someone who challenged me and support me and make me want to be better than I am. Bruce, she described you, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. 32 years before I met you, my mother described exactly who you are, and I'm supposed to believe that's coincidence. Sarah felt her own tears falling now. I don't believe in fate. I believe in choices and hard work and sometimes, Bruce interrupted gently, those choices lead us exactly where we're meant to be. He took her hand. I love you, Sarah. I've probably loved you since the night you blocked me in that ER and told me my money didn't matter. I just didn't know how to recognize it. I can't... Sarah struggled for words. Bruce, I need more time. I need to be sure. For Leo's sake and mine. I know, and I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm just telling you the truth, because my mother's letter reminded me that life is short and tomorrow isn't promised, and I don't want to waste another day without you knowing how I feel. Sarah squeezed his hand. Keep volunteering, keep showing up, keep being the man you've been these past 2 months, and ask me again in 3 months, when your volunteer commitment is done. When I know beyond any doubt that this is real. 3 months, Bruce agreed. I can wait 3 months. I'd wait 3 years if that's what you needed. You really have learned to wait your turn, haven't you? Sarah said, smiling through her tears. I had an excellent teacher. He stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, let me walk you to your car. And maybe, if you're not too tired, you could tell me about your day. The boring parts and the hard parts and all of it. I want to know everything. As they walked through the quiet hospital, Sarah realized something profound. For the first time since her divorce, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the mask to slip, for the man to prove himself unworthy of trust. Bruce had been tested by her, by circumstances, by his own worst impulses, and he'd passed. Not perfectly, not without stumbling, but with genuine effort and humble determination to do better. Maybe that was what real love looked like. Not perfection, but persistent growth. Not certainty, but courageous hope. Not ease, but the willingness to work through hard things together. In the parking garage, Bruce kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender and careful it made her heart ache. Good night, Sarah. Thank you for trusting me with your mother's letter. And with your heart, even just a little bit. Good night, Bruce. See you tomorrow. Every tomorrow, he promised, for as long as you'll have me. Sarah drove home with her mother's words echoing in her mind. He loves you. And for the first time, she let herself believe that might be enough. That she might be brave enough to love him back. That they might actually build something real and lasting and beautiful from the broken pieces they'd both been carrying. 3 months felt like forever, and no time at all. But Sarah had learned patience too. She'd learned that the best things were worth waiting for, and Bruce Foster, transformed from entitled billionaire into humble volunteer, from stranger to friend, to something she couldn't quite name yet, he was worth the wait. The 3-month mark arrived on a Tuesday in late November. Bruce had completed his volunteer commitment with perfect attendance and glowing reviews from every department. Sarah had watched him grow from someone performing service to someone genuinely embedded in the hospital's daily life. Staff knew him by first name now. Patients asked for him specifically. He'd become part of the fabric of Chicago General. That evening, Sarah found him in the volunteer locker room, hanging up his scrubs for the last time in his official capacity. "Congratulations," she said. "You made it." "I did," he turned to face her, "though I plan to keep volunteering, twice a week, if that's allowed. I've discovered I like being useful in ways that don't involve writing checks." "It's allowed." Sarah leaned against the doorframe. "Bruce, there's something I need to tell you." His face grew serious. "Okay. 3 months ago, you told me you loved me. You said to ask you again when your volunteer time was done." She took a breath. "I'm not asking you to say it again. I'm telling you, I love you too." Bruce's expression transformed from cautious to radiant. "Sarah, let me finish." She moved closer. "I love who you've become, who you're still becoming. I love how you read bedtime stories to Leo and fix my leaking faucet and spend your Saturdays at the children's hospital teaching kids to play chess. I love that you know every transport worker's name, and you bring coffee for the night shift nurses, and you've memorized the dietary restrictions of 16 different patients so you can chat with them about food." "Sarah," Bruce breathed, reaching for her. "I love you," she continued, letting him pull her close. "And I'm terrified, because the last time I loved someone, it ended with my life falling apart. But I'm also brave. And loving you feels like the bravest thing I've ever done." Bruce cupped her face in his hands. "I won't let you down. Not again. Not ever." "You might," Sarah said honestly. "You're human. We'll both make mistakes. But I believe now that you'll try, that you'll show up and do the work and choose us, even when it's hard. That's all I can ask. It's all I want to give." He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. "So what happens now?" "Now," Sarah smiled against his lips, "now you come to Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house, and you meet my whole family, and you survive my father's interrogation and my grandmother's scrutiny, and if you can handle that, we'll see about everything else." "Thanksgiving dinner with the in-laws," Bruce said, grinning. "Sounds perfect. They're not in-laws yet." "Yet," he repeated, and kissed her again. As they left the hospital together, not employer and employee, not billionaire and nurse, but simply two people who'd found their way to each other through struggle and transformation, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete, whole, home. And standing beside her, Bruce felt exactly the same way. Thanksgiving at the Miller house was controlled chaos. Sarah's childhood home in a working-class neighborhood on Chicago's west side was small and warm, and filled with the scent of roasting turkey. Bruce arrived with flowers for Sarah's mother and a bottle of wine he'd carefully researched. Not too expensive, not trying to impress, just thoughtful. "So you're the famous Bruce," Thomas Miller said, shaking his hand with a grip that was just slightly too firm. "The one who tried to buy his way past my daughter." "Dad," Sarah warned. "It's okay." Bruce met Thomas's eyes directly. "Yes, sir, I did. It was arrogant and wrong, and your daughter was absolutely right to stop me. Best thing that ever happened to me." Thomas studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Come help me carve this turkey. Let's see if you know your way around a kitchen." In the crowded kitchen, surrounded by 3 generations of Millers, Bruce fit in seamlessly. He mashed potatoes beside Sarah's grandmother, Margaret, who interrogated him with the subtle skill of someone who'd raised 6 children. He played football in the tiny backyard with Leo and Daniel, Sarah's brother, laughing when Leo accidentally tackled him into a pile of leaves. "He's good with kids," Jennifer Miller observed, standing beside Sarah at the kitchen window watching them play. "He is," Sarah agreed softly. "And he looks at you like you hung the moon." Her mother squeezed her shoulder. "I'm happy for you, sweetheart. You deserve someone who sees how extraordinary you are." Dinner was a beautiful disaster. The turkey was slightly dry. The gravy had lumps. Someone had accidentally used salt instead of sugar in the sweet potato casserole. Nobody cared. They ate and laughed and told stories, Bruce contributing his own memories of holidays with his mother before she died. "She sounds wonderful," Margaret said. "I wish we could have met her." "She would have loved all of you," Bruce replied, his voice thick. "She always said family was the most important thing, that nothing else really mattered if you didn't have people who loved you." After dinner, while the adults cleaned up, Leo dragged Bruce to his room to show him a Lego project he'd been working on. Sarah followed, standing in the doorway watching them. "It's a hospital," Leo explained proudly. "See, with an emergency room and everything, and this mini-figure." He held up a tiny plastic nurse. "That's you, Mom, super nurse Mom." "It's amazing, buddy," Bruce said seriously. "Who's this one?" Leo held up another figure. "That's you. You're the guy who learned to wait." Sarah's breath caught. Bruce looked at her over Leo's head, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Can I ask you something?" Leo said to Bruce, his voice going quiet in that way it did when he was nervous. "Anything. Are you going to stay, or are you going to leave like my other dad did?" Sarah started to intervene, but Bruce held up a gentle hand. "Leo, look at me. I'm not going anywhere, not ever. Your mum and I are taking things slow because we want to make sure we do this right, for all of us. But I promise you, I'm staying. You're stuck with me." "Good," Leo said, and hugged Bruce fiercely, "because I already told everyone at school you're my dad now." Bruce's arms came around the boy, holding him like he was precious. Over Leo's head, he mouthed to Sarah, "Is that okay?" She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Winter settled over Chicago, and with it came a comfortable routine. Bruce spent weekends at Sarah's apartment, fixing things, cooking dinner, playing endless rounds of Lego with Leo. They attended Leo's school events together, and if people assumed they were a family, none of them corrected the assumption. Bruce's transformation from distant billionaire to engaged partner and father figure was complete. He still ran Foster Enterprises. Marcus handled most day-to-day operations, but his priorities had fundamentally shifted. Board meetings were scheduled around Leo's soccer games. Business trips were planned, so he'd be home for dinner. His wealth was now a tool for good rather than a shield against the world. In late February, Leo graduated from speech therapy. Mrs. Washington called it one of her most successful cases, a child who'd gone from barely speaking to giving presentations in class without self-consciousness. The graduation ceremony was small, just Sarah, Bruce, and a handful of other families in the therapy center's modest conference room. Leo stood at the front and read a short speech he'd written himself. "When I started therapy, I was scared to talk. Kids made fun of me. I felt bad about myself, but Mrs. Washington taught me that my voice matters, and my mom showed me that working hard pays off. And Bruce," he looked directly at Bruce, "taught me that families aren't just about who you're born to, they're about who shows up for you." Sarah was openly crying. Bruce's hand found hers under the table, squeezing tight. After the ceremony, Mrs. Washington pulled them aside. "Leo's come so far, but more than his speech improving, his confidence has transformed. That's because of the stable, loving environment you've created." She looked at Bruce. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. That boy adores you." "The feeling is entirely mutual," Bruce said, his voice rough with emotion. They celebrated with ice cream at Leo's favorite shop, a tiny place near their apartment that made everything fresh daily. Bruce sat squished into a booth clearly designed for smaller people, eating strawberry ice cream and listening to Leo chatter about his plans for summer. "Can we go camping?" Leo asked. "My friend Tommy went camping with his dad and it sounded so cool." "I've never been camping," Bruce admitted, "but I'd love to learn with you." "Really? You do that, even though there's bugs and you have to sleep on the ground?" "Leo, I'd sleep on a bed of rocks if it meant spending time with you." Bruce ruffled his hair affectionately. "Besides, your mum can teach us. She seems like she'd be excellent at camping." "Mum's excellent at everything," Leo said matter-of-factly, then returned to his ice cream. Sarah met Bruce's eyes across the table and saw her future reflected back. Not perfect, but real and warm and full of this exact kind of simple joy. The annual Chicago General Hospital Charity Gala in April was the social event of the season. Sarah had tried to minimize her involvement in planning, but as CEO, she couldn't avoid it entirely. The theme was healing through service, a direct nod to the hospital's transformation over the past year. "Do I have to give a speech?" Sarah asked Amy while they got ready in Sarah's apartment. "You're the CEO. Of course you have to give a speech." Amy zipped up Sarah's gown, a simple but elegant navy dress she'd actually bought for herself this time. "But it'll be fine. Just talk about the hospital's success. The staff love you, the donors love you, even the media loves you after that investigative report calling us a model for healthcare reform." "I'm not good at these things." "You're amazing at these things. You just don't like the attention." Amy studied her friend. "You look beautiful, by the way. Bruce is going to swallow his tongue when he sees you." Sarah blushed. "We're keeping things professional at the gala." "Sure you are," Amy grinned. "That man has been planning something for weeks. Marcus told me Bruce has been acting weird and secretive." "Planning what?" "Guess you'll find out." The hotel ballroom was transformed into something magical. Soft lighting, elegant decorations, and several hundred of Chicago's most influential people. Sarah moved through the crowd with practiced ease now, comfortable in her role, confident in her work. Bruce was already there, looking devastating in a tuxedo, surrounded by donors. He caught her eye across the room and smiled. That private smile that was just for her. Sarah felt her heart skip. The evening proceeded smoothly. Speeches from board members, a video showcasing the hospital's achievements, patient testimonials that left hardly a dry eye in the room. Then it was Sarah's turn. She approached the microphone, took a breath, and began, "A year ago, this hospital was failing. Not because of lack of talent or dedication, but because we'd lost sight of our mission. We'd started measuring success in profit margins instead of lives changed." She talked about the transformation, the new equipment, the community partnerships, the focus on patient care above all else. She talked about the staff who'd embraced change, the donors who'd supported their vision, the patients who'd trusted them with their care. "But most importantly," she continued, "we learned that real leadership isn't about power or money. It's about service. It's about showing up every day and doing the work, whether that's performing surgery or emptying bedpans or sitting with a scared family in the waiting room. Every person in this hospital, from the CEO to the newest volunteer, is equally vital to our mission." The crowd applauded. Sarah started to step away from the microphone, but Bruce was suddenly walking toward the stage. She looked at him, confused, as he climbed the steps and took the microphone. "Thank you, CEO Miller, for that beautiful summary of everything we've accomplished." His voice was steady, but Sarah could see his hands trembling slightly. "I'd like to add something, if I may." The room fell silent, curious. 15 months ago, I walked into this hospital's emergency room as the worst version of myself, entitled, arrogant, absolutely certain that my money could buy anything, including priority in a crowded ER during a crisis. He looked directly at Sarah. Sarah Miller, who was the head ER nurse at the time, physically blocked my path and told me no. She told me that in her emergency room, the severity of someone's injury mattered more than the size of their bank account. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This story had become almost legendary in Chicago's medical community. "I was furious," Bruce continued, "so furious that I bought this entire hospital just to prove her wrong. I gave her an impossible job and expected her to fail." He paused. "Instead, she changed my life." Sarah's heart was pounding. This wasn't a business speech. Sarah taught me that true power comes from service, not dominance, that real leadership means listening, especially to people who tell you things you don't want to hear, that the most valuable things in life, compassion, integrity, love, can't be purchased at any price. Bruce reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sarah's breath stopped. She taught me patience. She taught me humility. She taught me how to wait my turn. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring, and I've been waiting for my turn for months now, hoping that it would come. He descended from the stage and walked to where Sarah stood frozen. The entire ballroom held its breath. Bruce knelt on one knee in front of her, in front of everyone. Chicago's elite, hospital staff, media cameras, hundreds of witnesses. "Sarah Elizabeth Miller, you are the bravest, most principled, most extraordinary person I've ever known. You made me want to be better than I was. You showed me what really matters. And you let me into your life and Leo's life even when I didn't deserve the chance." His voice was thick with emotion. "I would wait a lifetime for you if necessary, but I'm hoping, with everything I am, that you'll say yes. Will you marry me?" The ballroom was absolutely silent. Sarah looked down at Bruce, this man who'd been so arrogant and was now so humble, who'd been so closed off and was now so open, who'd transformed from adversary to partner to love, and felt her heart overflow. "You really learned to wait your turn," she said, her voice shaking. "I did," Bruce replied. "You were an excellent teacher." "Then yes." Tears streamed down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you." The ballroom erupted in applause and cheers as Bruce slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. He kissed her like she was air, and he'd been drowning. And Sarah kissed him back with all the love she'd been too scared to fully express until this moment. When they finally pulled apart, Leo was suddenly there. He'd been sitting with Sarah's parents in the audience, throwing himself at both of them. "Does this mean Bruce is really going to be my dad?" "If that's okay with you," Bruce said, lifting Leo up despite his fancy tuxedo. "It's so okay." Leo threw his arms around both their necks, creating an impromptu group hug on stage in front of hundreds of people. Sarah looked out at the crowd, saw her parents crying happy tears, saw hospital staff cheering, saw Amy jumping up and down with excitement, saw Victoria Sterling dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief and smiling. This was her life now. Not perfect, but beautifully, messily real. "I love you," she whispered to Bruce. "I love you too," he whispered back. "Thank you for teaching me to wait, and for being worth the wait." The orchestra started playing, and somehow they ended up dancing. Sarah and Bruce and Leo all together in the middle of the ballroom floor, while everyone watched and celebrated and bore witness to a love that had been forged in fire and emerged stronger for it. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in October, Sarah woke up in the home they'd bought together. Not Bruce's penthouse, not her tiny apartment, but a comfortable house in a good school district with a yard big enough for Leo and the dog they'd adopted last month. She found Bruce in the kitchen making pancakes while Leo sat at the table working on homework. The dog, a golden retriever mix named Bailey, was sprawled across Leo's feet. "Good morning," Bruce said, kissing her temple as she came up beside him. "Coffee's ready." "You're my favorite person," Sarah said, accepting the mug gratefully. "Hey," Leo protested, "I thought I was your favorite person." "You're my favorite 9-year-old person," Sarah corrected, ruffling his hair. That's fair, Leo agreed, returning to his math problems. This was their life now. Simple mornings and family dinners and homework help and dog walks. Bruce still ran Foster Enterprises, remotely, mostly with Marcus handling the day-to-day. Sarah still led Chicago General, now officially ranked among the top hospitals in the nation for patient care. They were busy and sometimes stressed and never quite caught up on laundry. It was absolutely perfect. "What are we doing today?" Leo asked through a mouthful of pancake. "Well," Bruce said, glancing at Sarah with barely contained excitement, "I thought we could go to that new ice cream place that opened downtown, the one that makes crazy flavors. But we just had ice cream last week," Leo said, confused. "True, but this is a special occasion." Bruce sat down at the table. "Leo, Sarah and I have some news. You're going to be a big brother." Leo's fork clattered to his plate. "What? Really? Are you serious?" Sarah nodded, her hand instinctively going to her still flat stomach. "Really serious. You're going to have a baby brother or sister next spring." "This is the best day ever!" Leo jumped up and hugged them both. "Can we name it something cool, like Optimus Prime?" "We'll take that under consideration," Bruce said diplomatically, winking at Sarah over Leo's head. After breakfast, they piled into Bruce's car, not the sports car he'd driven that first night, but a sensible SUV with room for car seats and dog crates and soccer equipment. They drove downtown to the ice cream shop, the same neighborhood place they'd visited for Leo's therapy graduation. The owner, Mr. Patel, greeted them warmly. "The Foster family. Your usual." Sarah felt her heart swell at the casual recognition. The Foster family, that's who they were now. They sat at their favorite booth, worn vinyl seats and a wobbly table that Bruce had offered to replace, but Mr. Patel insisted, added character. Leo chattered excitedly about being a big brother, making elaborate plans for teaching the baby everything he knew. "We should get a bigger Lego collection," he announced, "so I can share with the baby." "The baby won't be ready for Legos for a while," Sarah said gently. "Then I'll just have to practice more so I can be a really good teacher when they're ready." Leo's logic was unassailable. Bruce reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. "Happy?" he asked quietly. "Completely." She squeezed his fingers. "You?" "I didn't know it was possible to be this happy." He looked at Leo, at Sarah, at the simple ice cream shop, and the ordinary Saturday they were sharing. "You know what's amazing? A year and a half ago, I would have thought this was too simple, too ordinary. I would have thought I needed something bigger, more impressive, more expensive to feel fulfilled. And now I understand that this," he gestured at their little family, "this is everything. This is what my mother meant when she told me to find people to love. This is what real wealth looks like." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Bruce Foster, when did you get so wise?" "When I met a nurse who told me I couldn't buy my way to the front of the line." He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Best thing that ever happened to me." "Me too," Sarah said softly, "even though I was terrified. We both were, but we were brave together." Leo, oblivious to the emotional moment happening across the table, was giving Bailey pieces of his cone under the table. "Don't tell Mom," he whispered to the dog. "I can hear you," Sarah called out. "It's just a tiny piece." Bruce laughed, that genuine, joyful laugh Sarah had learned to treasure. "Come on, buddy, let's finish up and go to the park. Bailey needs a run, and I promised your mom I'd teach you to throw a curveball." As they left the ice cream shop, walking into the crisp autumn sunshine with Bailey pulling at the leash and Leo chattering about baseball, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From hostile confrontation in an ER to this moment of simple, profound happiness, She thought about the scared, defensive woman she'd been, determined to protect Leo and herself from any man who might hurt them. She thought about the arrogant billionaire Bruce had been, convinced that money could solve any problem, even grief. And she thought about who they'd become together. Not perfect people, but better people, not without flaws, but committed to growing past them, not living some fairy tale, but building something real and lasting from honest work and genuine love. "Hey," Bruce said, falling back to walk beside her while Leo ran ahead with Bailey. "What are you thinking about?" "About how you taught me to hope again," Sarah said, "and how I taught you to wait, and how we both learned that the best things in life are worth both hoping and waiting for." "That's beautiful," Bruce said softly. "Can I put that in my vows?" Sarah laughed. "We're already married, remember? That huge wedding last month?" "I remember. I just figure we should renew our vows every year. Make sure we don't forget what we promised each other." "Bruce Foster, you are the most romantic man I've ever known. Only because you taught me how to be," he replied, kissing her in the middle of the sidewalk, while Leo groaned theatrically and Bailey barked happily. That evening, after Leo was in bed and Bailey was snoring on her dog bed in the kitchen, Sarah and Bruce sat on their back porch with cups of tea, watching the stars emerge over Chicago. "Do you ever miss it?" Sarah asked. "The penthouse life, the power lunches and business deals, and being the most important person in every room?" Bruce was quiet for a moment, considering. "No," he finally said. "I thought I would. But Sarah, I have something now that I never had then. I have peace. I have purpose that matters. I have people who love me for who I am, not what I can do for them." He pulled her closer. "I have you and Leo and the baby coming. I have a hospital full of people I actually care about. I have a life that would make my mother proud." "She would be proud," Sarah agreed, "of the man you've become, of the good you're doing. Because of you. You showed me the way." "We showed each other," Sarah corrected. "You taught me to trust again, to open my heart even when I was terrified, to believe that people really can change." They sat in comfortable silence, Sarah's head on Bruce's shoulder, his hand resting gently on her stomach where their child was growing. "You know what the best part is," Bruce said eventually. "What?" "This is just the beginning. We have years and years of this ahead of us. Watching Leo grow up, raising the baby, building our life together day by day. And I get to spend all of it with you." "Years and years of waiting in lines together," Sarah teased. "Years and years of knowing that the wait was worth it," Bruce replied. Inside the house, Bailey barked once in her sleep. Upstairs, they could hear Leo moving around, probably not asleep yet despite being put to bed an hour ago. In the distance, the city hummed with life, millions of people going about their lives, each with their own struggles and triumphs, their own stories of hope and redemption. And here, on this porch, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way sat together in the gathering darkness, holding hands and believing in second chances and the transformative power of love. Sarah thought about that night in the ER, how angry she'd been at the entitled man trying to cut in line, how certain she'd been that he represented everything wrong with wealth and privilege. She thought about how wrong she'd been, not about standing up to him. That had been right, but about writing him off completely, about assuming he couldn't change, couldn't grow, couldn't become someone worth loving. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For proving me wrong, for being patient when I needed time, for becoming the kind of man who puts family first, for loving Leo like he's yours, for giving me a life I didn't even know I wanted." Bruce turned to face her fully, his hands framing her face with infinite gentleness. "Sarah, you gave me my life, Before you, I was just existing, going through motions. Now I'm actually living, so thank you for seeing past who I was to who I could become, for taking a chance on me, for teaching me what really matters." They kissed softly, tenderly, with all the love and gratitude and hope that neither of them had thought possible a year and a half ago. From inside the house, Leo called out, "Are you guys being mushy on the porch again? Because it's past my bedtime and I can't sleep if I'm thinking about you being mushy." They broke apart, laughing. "Go to sleep, buddy," Bruce called back. "I'm trying, but you're distracting me with your mushiness." Sarah stood, pulling Bruce up with her. "Come on, let's go tuck him in again, and maybe stay there until he actually falls asleep." "Best offer I've had all day," Bruce said, following her inside. They climbed the stairs together, just an ordinary couple at the end of an ordinary day. Except there was nothing ordinary about the journey that had brought them here. Nothing ordinary about the love they'd built from collision and conflict. Nothing ordinary about the family they were creating from broken pieces and second chances. In Leo's room, they found him still wide awake, Bailey having somehow snuck upstairs to curl up at the foot of his bed. "Can you tell me the story again?" Leo asked. "About how you met Mom." Bruce settled on one side of the bed, Sarah on the other. "Well," Bruce began, "it was a snowy night, and I made a really big mistake. I tried to be more important than I was. And your mom—" He reached across Leo to take Sarah's hand. "Your incredibly brave mom stopped me. She told me that being rich didn't make me special, that everyone deserved to be treated fairly." "And she was right," Leo said, having heard this story dozens of times but never tiring of it. "She was absolutely right. And it made me so mad that I did something really foolish. I bought the whole hospital just to prove a point. But Mom was still right," Leo continued the familiar narrative. "She was still right. And slowly, she taught me that being rich doesn't matter nearly as much as being kind, that power comes from helping people, not from pushing them aside. That the best things in life, love, family, belonging, can't be bought. They have to be earned. And now you're not foolish anymore," Leo concluded satisfactorily. "Now I try very hard not to be," Bruce agreed, "though I still make mistakes sometimes. But that's okay," Sarah added, "because we all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them and do better next time. Like how I learned to share my toys even when I didn't want to," Leo said. "Exactly like that." They stayed until Leo finally drifted off, his breathing evening out, his face peaceful in sleep. Then they carefully extracted themselves, left Bailey on guard, and returned downstairs. "He's a good kid," Bruce said, putting his arm around Sarah's waist. "The best kid," Sarah agreed. "Takes after his mom. Definitely takes after his mom." They checked the doors, turned off the lights, and climbed the stairs to their own bedroom. Their life wasn't glamorous. It was filled with mundane details, grocery shopping and parent-teacher conferences, and arguing over whose turn it was to walk the dog. But it was theirs, built together, chosen together, fought for together. As Sarah fell asleep in Bruce's arms, she thought about that moment in the ER when she'd stood in front of an angry billionaire and refused to move. She'd thought she was just doing her job, protecting vulnerable patients, upholding the principle that everyone deserved equal treatment. She hadn't known she was also protecting the man he could become, hadn't known that her refusal to back down would spark a transformation that would change both their lives, hadn't known that the angry stranger would become her partner, her love, her family. But that's how the best stories work, she thought drowsily. You don't see the happy ending coming. You just keep showing up, keep doing what's right, keep hoping that somehow it will all work out. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, it does. Outside, snow began to fall, the first snow of the season, turning Chicago into a winter wonderland. Inside, 3 people and 1 dog slept peacefully, safe and warm and together. A family formed not by chance, but by choice. A love built not on ease, but on effort. A life that proved definitively that people could change, that second chances were real, and that the bravest thing anyone could do was hope. Sarah had taught Bruce to wait his turn. Bruce had taught Sarah to trust again. Together, they'd taught each other that love, real love, was worth every fear faced and every risk taken. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all over again. The ordinary miracle of building a life together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of courage and grace at a time. It was, Sarah thought, in that space between waking and sleep, more than enough. It was everything. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.